Tweet. There we go. I think we are live now.
Yes,
Good morning, everyone. LM, GM, whatever your M is, G move.
Merhaba is what I'm seeing on my timeline now since I got a sloth. I have to learn Turkish now, I think.
Yeah. There's also G alt to all the alt VM enjoyers out there. Well, it's great to be on. We have Lewis, who is founder of Gelato, on today. And the reason we're having them on, well, for those who don't know, Gelato is one of the top rollup as a service providers in the space, and one that works very closely in the Celestia ecosystem. And then earlier this week, they announced Abundance, or ABC, sovereign rollup stack, which can achieve Gigagas levels of throughput. Gas is the measurement of like the throughput of an execution layer. So, and most execution layers currently are in the megagas range. And it's pretty astonishing that ABC is reaching gigagas throughput. So we wanted to dive into that. We wanted to understand why Gelato is betting so hard on sovereign rollups. This is something that the Celestia, vision has always emphasized, sort of the potential for sovereign rollups versus the standard smart contract settled rollups that you see in Ethereum. So we're going to unpack all of that with Luis. So Luis, welcome. Feel free to give a quick intro, and then let's dive in.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I'm Luis. I'm one of the two founders of Gelato and Abundance. So Abundance is the newest project out of Gelato. It is essentially the essence of my journey in understanding what rollups are. And interestingly, I thought about this, and my journey of understanding what rollups are started many years ago, many years ago, I think 2020, with a random podcast I listened to on ZK-FM, at the Zero Knowledge podcast, and it was with John Adler. And I think it was Lazy Ledger back then or something, but John must have been there from the start, right? And I remember like John explaining rollups and even Lazy Ledger, or like now Celestia back then. And it's sort of like, I remember this episode distinctly as very like I learned a lot, but then it sort of disappeared a bit. And then rollups were like a big thing with L2s and Ethereum and so on, right? And then, so essentially, I think Celestia has just been such an integral part in my journey of understanding everything in blockchains from the ground up. So super happy to be here today and talk about what we are doing there with Abundance, which is different to what rollup as a service providers normally do. Normally, rollup as a service providers, they give you an Ethereum L2 or like L3 or something, usually OP stack or Arbitrum, right? In which we have many chains of. We were working with both teams really well. And Abundance and ABC stack, this is a different thing. It is not an Ethereum thing at all. It is a Celestia native rollup stack, and this rollup itself is very different to a normal OP L2, for example, on Ethereum. It is a sovereign rollup, which Celestia has pioneered, and let me tell you, it took me like quite some time to understand the concept. Like I think everybody that hears this at first is like, what the hell? It doesn't make any sense, really. But like I always say, or really I stole this, I think, from Sam Altman, is like, there's the saying that the best ideas sound stupid, but aren't. And this is for me what sovereign rollups are. It's like they sound stupid at first. It's like, what? You're an L1, you're not your own settlement layer. The whole point of a rollup is to settle somewhere, right? Well, I guess it isn't, right? So ABC stack is the first big EVM sovereign rollup stack that is built by us, and it is our way of also contributing to the stack space, not just in the hosting as a rollup as a service. And I think it's just like a major unlock for us. But yeah, let's unpack that a bit before I ramble on too long here.
No, that was a great intro, and I really relate to you in the fact that when I first learned about Celestia or Lazy Ledger, it forced me to rethink so many concepts I took for granted about blockchains and rebuild my understanding from the ground up. And I think that the same is true for not just for the layer one, but also for like rollups and what they are. And I think like so many people in the space come from the Ethereum perspective of these rollups need to have this like enshrined, contract bridge. And when you break out of that, it turns out there's a lot of things that open up for you. But at least when you start off with your understanding of rollups in that mental model, it's very confusing and strange and sounds stupid actually to build them in a different way. So I think it's really cool that you guys like took that leap and into this like new frame of thinking. And I think I think that like the existing rollup space and modular ecosystem is very much, it's probably like 95% these sort of like smart contracts rollups, and now there's like an increasing amount of like sovereign rollup stacks. Like we have Sovereign SDK, we have Rollkit, and now ABC Stack. And I think this is like a growing trend. Like we have on the one hand like all these EVM, so almost everything is EVM, settled rollups, and now we're going to start to have like sovereign rollups. We're going to start to have alt VM rollups like Eclipse and Movement and Initia and things like that. And like I'm just really excited for the modular future. And to me, ABC Stack is one of those new frameworks that's going to like open up a lot of potential for people to build. So yeah, tell us like more about what is ABC Stack, like what does it enable for application developers that you couldn't do before? What are some of its features, and also maybe a bit about how it works?
Yeah, so ABC Stack is for me the conclusion of the modular stack. And
those are big words.
Yes, I think that like where I got re-Celestia pilled was this whole like modularism, not maximalism. And I think this is also encoded in ABC Stack very well. And like for me, ABC Stack and sovereign rollups are the conclusion of the modular thesis, because you now really also modularize the bridge. In an L2 construction, you have an enshrined bridge, you have a modular settlement layer. In a sovereign rollup, you don't have a modular settlement layer. You are the settlement layer. You're like more like an L1. I sometimes call sovereign rollups. There are rollups. So here's what people like, why it's so hard to understand sovereign rollup is because usually people come with an understanding of L2s and they think L2s and rollups are the same. They're not. Like I have this meme that L2s, there are no L2s. It's just chains and bridges, right? Which I think I stole that from Zaki or someone. And that's the key. That was another key unlock for me in my journey of understanding all of this. Is like, is just chains and bridges. That really helps. Even in L2, like L2s don't exist per se. An L2 is just a rollup that uses an external settlement layer in a very weird, like enshrined bridge that is very opinionated. And these are normally known as the optimistic fraud proof window bridge, the rollup bridge, right? Obviously famously used by Optimism and Arbitrum, or like a ZK bridge, ZK rollup bridge, which I mean, maybe makes a bit more sense in terms of the future proofing there because of latencies and so on. But still, it's a very opinionated way of connecting a chain to a so-called settlement layer. And in a way, like another unlock here is to understand that settlement itself is also just a meme, is like a very elusive concept, right? Like for example, Ethereum is called a settlement layer, but everybody knows that a huge chunk of the assets on Ethereum is like Circle, and Circle is the issue of that asset, and Circle and Tether are the ultimate settlement layers, right? So like everybody knows that if Circle or Tether would jointly or even individually bake up a certain version of Ethereum, they would have a very strong power to influence the network in following that version. So in a way, like Circle is the real settlement layer and so on. Now, of course, Ethereum is bigger than Circle. Like ETH, the asset is great, right? So it's more than that for sure. But like settlement is a meme, right? And similarly, like on sovereign rollups, yeah. So you could say you lose some modularity because you're now, as a rollup, not just doing execution anymore, you're doing both execution and settlement. But actually, I think that's not true. I think it's still more modular than an L2 because settlement is a meme, and you can just have any bridge you like, right? Like you can use layer 0, you can use USDC, Circle, Socket, Hyperlane, lazy bridging, right? So anything you like, and any foreign asset that you import in your rollup will be settled by that bridge anyways, right? So settlement is just a meme. So ultimately, sovereign rollups are the epitome of the modular thesis, and they give you one last missing piece of modularity, which is like, hey, just bridge how you like use whatever bridge you want. But also another key unlock is or maybe no bridge at all, right? And guess what? Most of our rollup as a service customers at Gelato, most of them, they don't really use the native L2 bridge, or they don't, or like normally the bridge should be used to get ETH first, but then they want a custom gas token, so they don't even want their users to pay with ETH and so on, right? So actually a lot of use cases don't want to connect to Ethereum. They don't care about ETH the asset. They just want to put something, and they don't need a bridge at all. Like if you have a single asset on your chain, your game asset, and that's it, a sovereign rollup, just like any other L1, natively issues that asset, and that's the end of the story. You don't need a bridge, right? So that's another key unlock here. I think you sometimes have to go to extremes to understand concepts. And for me, a key unlock with this whole bridging and settlement meme and the sovereign rollup thesis is you can have a rollup without any bridge at all. And with an L2, you can't have that. Like we have users, literally many chains that have the L2 bridge, but they're not using it. But you can't get rid of it. The stack enshrines it, right? And that's just a huge inefficiency. So you get it whether you want it or not.
Yeah, I remember talking to you a while back, and you were showing me sort of like L2 beat, and like as you go down, like certain L2s do have a significant amount of value actually bridged in the canonical bridge, like maybe over half of their TVL or something like that. But a lot of them have very minimal, if not almost zero, assets bridged through their canonical bridge with the Ethereum L1. And so at that point, it's like well, why are you making this trade-off of enshrining all this like logic for the bridge in your rollup when you're not even using it, and it causes all this overhead, and then you inherit all these other, I guess like downsides when if you just get rid of that, and you can still have the bridge. It just doesn't have to be sort of like a core assumption in the way that you build your rollup, and all of a sudden like a whole bunch of new opportunities open up to you. And so I think that was like a really interesting insight that you had. And I think, yes, again, like the settlement layer as a meme, to me, I think like the vision of like settlement in Ethereum is like all the assets should be issued and should be canonical on the Ethereum L1, not like they always thought of it like, oh, well, you have all assets on the L1 and then you bridge them up to the L2, you do things, and then you can always like bring them back. And like the L1 is like the ledger of record for all these assets. But I think to me and to anyone coming from more of like a Cosmos angle, it's sort of like, no, the assets should be issued on the rollups and be native there. That's where like their canonical version, that's where the ledger of record should just be the chain where the community who uses or who has built those things lives, right? And so it should be native to the rollup. And at least that's anyway like another reason why.
Exactly.
Like if the Ethereum L1 is just another chain, right? It's not like it shouldn't necessarily have like a, I don't know, be like the place where all the assets live and are issued. It's like the ledger of record for ETH and any of the other assets there, but not for the L2 or rollup per se.
Yes, and the funny thing, what you alluded to here, like what I realized early on when I was trying to explain sovereign rollups to our team and so on, right? Like again, the first time I really took a look at it, we had internal research that's like almost 2 years ago. Back then it was like, we looked at, I think Sovereign SDK was one of the SDKs out already, at least in development. And I didn't really get it the first time, and then revisited it at the start of the year, because then I was realizing, wait a second, we have all these users, we have this L2 bridge, which is very important for a RaaS provider, because guess what? Like you own the keys to that bridge, right? Like, so you have all sorts of liability things. You have to make sure it's secure. There's vendor lock-in, as we've seen with the Degen Conduit drama, right? Where Degen wanted to move away from Conduit, and like you can't just like there's huge vendor lock-in because you have to ask the RaaS, they have to transfer the ownership of the bridge and so on. So like with an L2 design, the RaaS provider becomes like the bridge operator, if you will. And you don't even have that with a sovereign rollup, because like there's no bridge, or like you use layer 0 or something, and they are special. Like this is also about modularity, division of work, and specialization, right? Like the cornerstones of a good working economy. And here again is like, and to be fair, like the whole L2 bridge thing also sucks. Like, right, everybody knows the 7-day window. Like the only people who are using this bridge are like cross relayers and so on, right? Everything else is abstracted with the liquidity management. So users aren't using the bridge, even on the chains where there is significant TVL in the bridge. They're using liquidity management from across. Across then needs to use the bridge to rebalance their inventory. But they hate it. They hate the 7 days. It's extremely capital inefficient. They have to inject fresh capital to fill all the time. The rebalancing is cooked, right? So like we don't even like I don't call the optimistic L2 bridge. I don't even call it a bidirectional bridge. It's like a unidirectional bridge. The into the rollup is great. It's instant, but withdrawing 7 days, come on, like this is a meme, right? Like this is not the future of France. Everybody knows that. ZK sure is an option there, and I think OP already has ZK fraud proof of 6 signals on that. These are cool designs to get the latency down, right? For sure. But yeah, so it's just a very like this. We will look back on this period and we'll be like, what the hell were we thinking then, right? So this is, I think, pretty obvious to me. But yeah, so people aren't really using these bridges anyway. So what the hell? And they're not using them because they're using external providers already, like Socket. We have a rollup like Raya, huge TVL Orbit rollup, and I think 100% of their assets are issued on the rollup with Socket and not the bridge. Yeah, but even more, like you said, the native asset issuance, right? Like if you look on Base and so on, there's so many assets that don't even live on Ethereum, right? So Ethereum, the whole point with this L2 bridge design is to have a trust minimized bridge to Ethereum, the asset issuance layer. But if your asset doesn't live on Ethereum, Ethereum can't bail you out, right? So the whole, or Ethereum is like you inherit the security from Ethereum, complete BS, right? Like it completely depends on your asset. Really, for ETH that you bridge in, if you put your ETH into the Arbitrum 1 bridge and you have that then on Arbitrum, yes, now you're secured by Ethereum. That's true. But actually, I think the question of how important that is just a question of what are the assets. And Ethereum is a great asset, and you want to import that in the cleanest way possible, probably. And there, the rollup bridges are great. But apart from Ethereum, unfortunately, I think we haven't seen that many crypto native assets. Like most of the stuff are real world assets. It's like dollars and so on, right? And and Bitcoin on Ethereum is not a crypto asset. It's like custody by someone like Bitwise or whoever, right? So actually, funnily, most of the crypto assets are meme coins, if you think about it. There you don't have a real world entity that can sort of steal from you or confiscate or whatever. So actually, I think the only crypto native assets are the assets that are issued by an L1 like TIA or ETH, or meme coins that are like living on these L1s. Maybe you could argue project token coins and so on, right? But there's usually an entity behind that as well. So yeah, like I don't know. I'm not that bullish on Ethereum as this asset issuance layer anymore, outside of Ethereum ETH, the asset itself. And of course, ETH is a great asset for DeFi and so on. It's a decentralized asset. There's not that many of them. And in that regard, it's awesome, right? But apart from this, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's a reality that the space will slowly kind of come to terms with, is like, you know, sovereign chains are kind of the way that like most applications I think are going to be built, and you guys are just early to it. So one thing that I want to touch on is, I mean, so the big headline of this whole announcement of ABC Stack, and and it was called Abundance, right? Is this Gigagas throughput, right? And I know you can't reveal all of your secret sauce for how you get to, you know, Gigagas. Apparently, I mean, you have chains that are live on testnet where you've tested this, right?
Yeah.
So it's not an unfound claim.
You can check it now on Gigagas Live,
right?
actually. Yeah.
Sorry?
So yeah, no mainnets yet, but it's coming really soon. We literally just need to we just need to do some BD, right? Like we're talking to a lot of folks that are super interested, that need a Gigagas and so on. And yeah, so once the first application is ready for mainnet, we're ready as well, and that will be very soon, I think.
So that's something that I want to touch on, right? So first of all, I'm just curious, how did you get Gigagas? What you can share, and as far as I understand, there's a relationship to the fact that this is a sovereign rollup stack, and some of the advantages you get by being Celestia opinionated, that allow you to achieve this level of throughput. And then the second thing is, like, you know, you're out in the market, you know, selling chains to teams and builders. And I'm curious, like, we talk a lot internally at Celestia about the fact that we're entering this abundance era of like high throughput, and what that means for the kinds of things that you can build. And so I'm just curious to hear from you, who's like so close to the people actually like choosing which rollups stacks to build on, which data availability layers to choose. What is this? What are some of the applications that people want to build and can take advantage of that you can't build on these traditional rollup frameworks that don't have this level of throughput?
Yeah, and actually now I will present quickly because I'm gonna show you
Cool.
Let me see here. Let's see, share screen. So yeah, can you see my screen is the question. Yeah, you can see it, right?
Oh, what is this? So this is the dashboard?
Yeah, so you can go to gigagas.live.
Gigagas.live.
Yeah, it's live on the Gigagas side. It's the funniest account on X, I have to say. It's popped up recently. And there they added ABC yesterday. Right now it's not at 1 gigagas, but I've seen it do more than 1 gigagas. I think the account posted yesterday about it. So right now it's at 0.46 gigagas. This happens sometimes, right? Like depends on the usage on the testnet, but I've seen it do gigagas. Like if you go to gigagas.live, if you have no life yourself, just spend all day on it, and I promise you you will see it. You will see it rip into the gigagas zone.
And this is on testnet. This is also on Celestia testnet.
Yes, this is like actually I think for our ABC testnet where we have achieved the Gigagas internally like already like months ago. I think we had this joke where it's like Gigagas doesn't know whether you're a testnet or not, right? So actually it might be that we use Real Celestia. I don't think so, but technically why not, right? Because like Gigagas doesn't care if you're a testnet or not, right? Like, well, it's just the same metric at the end of the day.
Totally.
Testnet or mainnet, the only difference is it real money or not, right? But for the performance, it doesn't really matter. So actually, at some point we wanted to use the Real Celestia for our testnet. I'm not sure if they actually did it or not.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm just curious what the data consumption is of a Gigagas throughput rollup. What is running on that chain right now? Is it just like a bunch of transfers, or are there like actual applications?
I think there's all sorts of scripts that the team runs to crank it up. But it's not the only one. We have some real users testing already. Actually, it was funny when we announced this. I think some of the first chains were all of our RAS competitors who were like, "What the fuck is going on?" And they all like, not all, but like some of them created ABC chains to see if we're real or joking here. Yeah, that was fun to watch. But yeah, anyway, so we have some real customers and essentially, you were asking about like, okay, like what's happening here, right? So ultimately, like I mentioned earlier, like the L2 bridge that is enshrined by Ethereum L2 stacks, it comes with a lot of overhead. And like I said, given that on a sovereign rollup, you don't need a bridge, and especially the bridge isn't part of the client, you remove that overhead completely. And it turns out that these bridges introduce a lot of overhead, which is like, when I say settlement cost, by the way, nowadays, I don't just mean the literal cost that you pay Ethereum for settling your rollup, which is in like the hashes, the state roots you post to the bridge, right? Like usually you need to post the data to the DA layer, right? And then you need to post the state commitments as well to the bridge. And that's what's called settlement. It's literally just posting hashes of your rollup blocks, in sequence. And this is like one actually expensive settlement cost. It's non-negligible. We actually realized this running some Arbitrum AnyTrust chains earlier, where we thought, oh, the cost will be like almost zero now because we're using AnyTrust SDA and it's like a centralized server, right? Turns out our chain still had significant costs just from posting the hashes to Ethereum or maybe Arbitrum 1. So that's one thing, but I think the real cost as well is the cost of running the bridge in the client. That because you constantly have to sync with it, and yeah, you're not just running a rollup, you're running a bridge now as well, right? So and in the software, like as a software developer, like I always discovered that separation of concerns, decoupling, modularization is the way to get the unlocks. And like I said early on in this podcast, like sovereign rollups are the ultimate modular conclusion, and they decouple bridging from rollups. And now it's just chains and bridges.
Yeah, and I think also the thing that people, there have been a lot of debates on Twitter before in years gone by about like sovereign rollups, and a lot of people took the position that like, oh, every rollup sovereign, like this is just kind of like a meme or a very, very like technical jargon thing. But the reality is that no, like when you're building a smart contract like settled rollup, the bridge is like enshrined into the rollup client itself. It's not just like an additional thing that you can like remove or not pay attention to if you don't want to. Like it's literally the whole architecture of the rollup is like it assumes that and is like that is like an integral part of it.
Yes.
Something else that
what's even more ugly about it is something that we discussed just before we even recorded here. Reorgs. There was a topic today, right?
Yes.
On X. So actually, what's even more ugly than that is a bridge is one of these smart contract infrastructures that is extremely prone to reorg damages. And as like Gelato started out with smart contract automation, right? Like still is the best there. And like even in the early days of Gelato, when I was still coding this stuff, like the biggest headaches we always had for any piece of infrastructure that talked to the chain where it was reorg handling, right? Like especially on Polygon where you had 180 deep block reorgs or something sometimes. And a bridge is especially prone to that. Like a bridge is essentially, sometimes I call them reorg risk managers. Because if you think about a bridge, it is handling asset transfers on two separate domains. So if one of them reorgs, you have an inconsistency that you cannot fix anymore. And you might be shit out of luck and you might have done a transfer and your counterparty has the money and they send you money and you don't have it anymore, right? Like this is a bridge problem. The whole purpose of a blockchain was to remove the double spend problem, and with bridging, you're back to the double spend problem per se, because you can have
especially on a liveness favoring like forkful L1 like Ethereum, right? Versus like a single slot finality layer one.
Yes. I mean, if you bridge between two single slot finality chains, your risk management job is very conservative. It's not that much risk anymore, right? But chains like most chains like Ethereum, they are availability favoring or liveness favoring, right? So they are willingly accept reorgs, and now you have to manage that risk, and it's a nightmare. So this is why usually when you work with layer 0 and across and so on, these guys, they only want the best RPCs. They want multiple of them. And when they give you really fast bridging, they're just saying, okay, we are sure it won't reorg, but they haven't eliminated all of the risk, right? There's still some risk. And actually, technically, in an L2, if you really use the L2 bridge for your asset, technically you need to wait 7 days. Also for the challenge period. Actually, that might be a bit unrelated now that I think of it, but yeah. So the reorg problem is huge, and this is because like in bridging with smart contracts, especially, like you need to make sure the smart contract state is still updated and so on. So there's a huge overhead you have in the L2 blockchain rollup clients, because they essentially just have huge synchronization mechanisms to make sure that their rollup server is really seeing the correct version of Ethereum and that no reorgs have happened. And if there is a reorg, you need to respond, right? So there's a bunch of code running that just handles that, and that is ugly code.
And I heard something like it's like 80% of the OP stack, like
I haven't read the full stack, so I'm not sure, but I know from Gelato that it, like from my gut feeling, it tells me 80% of our code is like reorg handling, so it makes sense.
Well, yeah, this has been a super interesting conversation to kind of unpack settlement, and it's funny because we're like fudding settlement very hard, but actually today earlier, Mustafa published this new blog post all about lazy bridging, which is I wouldn't necessarily call it settlement, but it adds bridging capabilities to the Celestia L1. But like, I think it's a very different philosophy, to Ethereum in a lot of different ways. One is like there's no state or execution that gets added to the Celestia L1. It's just like use the ZK verification, feature that is going to be shipped sometime next year. So you don't add any overhead to that one. That's very important, right? We want Celestia to be as minimal as possible. Second of all, it's not for like issuing assets. Like, we're not trying to be like we discussed earlier, this like, ledger of record for everything. It's more of a convenient way for you to, prove your state to a bunch of other chains and like connect to a whole ecosystem of, other L1s that are connected to Celestia L1, as well as all the rollups that are on top. So it's like this kind of like coordination mechanism. And furthermore, it's not enshrined. Like, it's totally optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. And we hope that stacks like ABC do support it, but it's not necessarily something that is like everything is like, it's not forced on you in the same way that I think that settlement on Ethereum is currently kind of forced on you in a lot of these like eccentric stacks. But anyway, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on lazy bridging, given that like it was announced earlier today.
Fucking love
it. Yeah, why?
So,
tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, by the way, I'm not fighting settlement. Settlement is amazing. I'm just saying people get it wrong all the time, and settlement is an elusive concept. It's poorly defined. And as Ethereum, you can call it a settlement layer if you will, but you're clowning a bit because like that's not the full picture, right? Like if you talk about USDC on Ethereum, Circle has the last word, not Ethereum, right? So it really depends on your asset. So when you think settlement, you need to think asset, and then you need to ask who is issuing this asset, and who's settling this asset ultimately. And there you want to cut out the middleman, and ideally you go directly to the asset issuer, Circle, right? CCTP. So technically, the best bridge for USDC is not the Ethereum rollup bridge; it is Circle CCTP, and that's why Arbitrum and Polygon and Optimism asked everyone to stop using the bridge USDC and start using the Circle USDC when it came, right? Because everybody agrees that this is the best settlement layer is Circle itself, because
it's faster, it's like more secure because it's like them, like they're the counterparty.
I mean, they just have the last word anyways, right? Like if USDC means Circle has an IOU, like they technically owe you dollars, right, somewhere, and at the end of the day, if they give you these dollars directly, that's the best, most secure way of doing it, right? So so just to be clear on that, like settlement exists, settlement is important, but it's very misunderstood in our space, and ultimately it's just chains and bridges. So and bridges are closely related to settlement, even more so than chains. Chains, as we know from sovereign rollups, can also do settlement. But like if you have a sovereign rollup, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that doesn't have a bridge, which exists, it has a natively issued asset on the rollup. This asset only exists on this rollup. It's only issued by that rollup, like an Ethereum L1 ETH, right? Or like with ABC Stack, if you have an in-game asset or your own stablecoin, you can let the blockchain natively issue that. Now, a stablecoin is maybe a bad example because usually it's a real-world asset. So again, the real-world issuer is the real settlement layer. But maybe it's like a Luna USD, but please don't. But an algorithmic one or something. So your sovereign rollup now is a true settlement layer because it's natively issuing an asset that doesn't exist anywhere else, and the blockchain is the ledger of record that we coalesce around, right? But as soon as you introduce bridges, it's settlement is the water gets muddied, and yeah, so lazy bridging and why I think it's awesome. First of all, if you're threatened by your DA layer, you're weak. We build ABC in a way where like we want to be max aligned with the Celestia roadmap. Celestia is amazing at DA sampling, at decentralization, proof of stake, whatnot. So like, if Celestia also gives me a bridge, right, then awesome, right? Like Celestia is IBC. I now get IBC for free without having to build it myself. That's great. Sounds good to me, right? Because ultimately, I'm not here to build redundant infrastructure, like that someone else can do better than me. I'm here to finally bring real apps on chain, right? Apps that only exist off chain today. And ABC, one of the slogans is build everything on chain, right? So I don't want to become a settlement layer here. I don't care about that. Like, the apps can be the settlement layers if they want to. The apps can use lazy bridging for asset settlement if they want to. Whatever floats your boat, right? I'm here to facilitate that. I'm not here to build new infrastructure that has already been already existed 20 times. And I think Celestia actually is in a unique value, has a much better position than I do to build a settlement layer, because it is also a DA layer, right? And that sort of vibes well. If your rollup uses Celestia for DA and also as a bridge, now that's great, right? Like, we know this from Ethereum. Ethereum always tells people, oh, you have to use Ethereum both for DA and the bridge, otherwise you're not a real L2. Like, we should even stop calling you an L2 or whatever, right? Like, similar, there's some truth to that, right? Like, I think you do get some benefits from co-locating your DA layer with ZK count lazy bridging. I haven't fully studied that, but I like, gut feeling says maybe there's something there. So yeah, but for me, the even better part is I don't want to rebuild IBC or like have a settlement layer that does like settle rollups and IBC, or like, I don't want to do that. Not about that. Like, Celestia does IBC perfectly. Celestia probably already has great connections on IBC to great chains. So if Celestia now gives me a way to compose with it, awesome, right? That's why I'm looking forward to lazy bridging. And yeah, ZK, the ZK part, I love ZK, but I just think it won't be ready anytime soon. Every year people tell me it's ready this time. Eventually it will be. I just don't think, like, yeah, sure, it's ready, but what do I really mean with ready is like, okay, is it instant and is it low cost, right? And there I have my doubts.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So well, I think it's important to clarify something really quick, which is that, like, so the lazy bridging, the settlement is through like a ZK proof to the L1. Now the thing is, like, I agree with you that, like, well, is the ZK endgame here, which is like we have real time proving and it's super cheap, and so it's like literally like when I create a block, I like a few seconds later, have the ZK proof that block is valid. And then all of a sudden you can have like this, the bridging, the native bridging can be extremely quick. But the thing is that even when we're not there, just the ability to settle your rollup with an hour time window of finality is extremely useful, because what can happen in the background are these like intense based solutions or other things that like make it much faster, and their cost is like the risk / the inventory, like, cost of like of market making these bridges. So I think even without this real-time proving, the fact that we have stacks like succinct SP1 or like risk0 that are now becoming cheap enough and like generalized enough to be able to prove something like ABC, and as far as I understand, you guys are built in Rust, so it would be very easy to do that. I think it provides like a massive amount of benefit. But I feel like I could talk a lot longer, but like
I have to respond to that though, like just quickly. Yeah. we can finish up. So first of all, I agree. ZK is a massive improvement for Across and other market makers, because now, like, they have currently on optimistic rollups, they have the 7-day rebalance problem, which sucks, which is why they don't scale too many rollups, right? ZK improves that 1,000-fold or so, bring it down from 7 days to maybe 30 minutes. It's probably a factor of 10,000x, maybe more. I don't know. I'm not good at math, right? But it's still not end user ready. It's still 30 minutes, so you still need someone to abstract the latency for end users. Mm-hmm. And at Gelato, we always thinking one click everything, right? Like, we want to be the AWS of the future web, right? And I think until we have market makers that are one click ready to deploy on any chain, any testnet, and abstract 30 minutes of latency, that's still going to be the issue. So for me, the like, sure, your conversation in lazy bridging with 30-minute settlement with Across will be easier than convincing them to support your rollup with 7-day settlement, for sure. But it's still a conversation that you need to have, right? And I want to completely remove the human altogether. Like, at that point, like, that's the ZK endgame, where it's like, hey, the technology does the bridging for you, and there's no abstraction, right? Like there's no abstraction.
Exactly.
I love you. Insert my lady. I mean, right? So yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that's also always been the vision for like IBC and Cosmos is like there shouldn't be a bridge provider that you need to negotiate with to support. It should all just be permissionless. Like shouldn't have to do BD when you launch your chain at all. It should just literally be you launch it and all the services that you need like work out of the box, including bridging. And one of the challenges, like if you're trying to do an intent-based thing, is like you have to actually kind of like bootstrap that market and like get the support of solvers and whatever other like intermediaries need to facilitate that. And furthermore, if it's a long tail chain, it just might not be profitable for these things to,
and especially back to assets,
so,
like they also probably just won't support any asset you have because they have to somehow put that on their books, right? So they don't want to be exposed to that. So normally they do stable coins, there's no risk, or high cap coins because they're long anyways. But if you come with your weird whatever chain, right, and now you also convince them to put assets on the book, they won't. Probably you now have to loan them assets, right? And now we have to sort of automate the loan agreement and whatnot. So I've thought about it, right? But like this is where like today I'm just like, okay, people want instant bridging. Let's just get like a layer 0 hyperlane, whatever, like online. And then if you want to go then to base or something, you probably still need some type of market maker for that flow. But like ultimately, I'm extremely bullish on ZK accounts and lazy bridging because I just think like it's a roadmap, right? And a roadmap should also look into the future, and it's just the first big step towards that absolute awesome end game with ZK interop. And that alone makes me excited enough to just try it out whenever it's out.
Yeah. Well, Luis, this has been awesome to dive deep on ABC, abundance, sovereign rollups, lazy bridging, and ZK and stuff. But yeah, I think we're a little bit over time. So to wrap up here, what is like next for the abundance ABC stack? When can we expect the first, Gigagas rollups to be live? Can you share any hints on like what kind of cool applications those are as we close up?
Yeah, so what's next? Obviously, Terragas is the meme now.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah, so Gigagas was a meme for a while. We won that, but now it's Terragas time. So, and we're the first ones to coin that. So Terragas is next.
That's crazy. I love it.
You should update the Celeste roadmap to 1 terabyte blocks, obviously now. But no, actually for real, I think 1 gigabyte blocks is like bandwidth wise, that's already so much. 1 gigagas isn't that much actually. It is pretty good, but I think some like real big applications, they need way more than that. I heard that Mega ETH is already sort of memeing on Twitter 10 gigagas. I don't know, like let's wait and see. That's going to be interesting. But yeah, and then what's next? I mean, stay tuned, follow at Gelato Network, and we will announce the customers that are that are launching testnets and mainnets on there, and at abundance _ XYZ, of course, as well. And also let me just make clear that abundance and Gelato are like basically the same thing. Gelato is the rollup as a service provider, hosting many stacks, or like three of them, right? ABC, OP, and Orbit, and abundance is just the sovereign rollups Celestia native stack that we decided to build because a lot of our customers weren't well served by Ethereum scaling technologies. They didn't care about Ethereum. They didn't care about being L2. So at some point we just said, okay, why not give them a something else? That's ABC, and it's really something else because it's just happens to have ripped through the 1 gigagas barrier. So first in that gigagas zone.
Yeah. It's so cool because I think of rollup as a service teams as like the tip of the spear in terms of talking to the customers that are choosing to build a modular stack, and like the abundance, like this ABC stack that you built, the sovereign rollup stack, is a direct response to what your customers have actually been demanding. So it's like
100%.
It's really cool that like this is not like you're not like doing it because it's cool to be a sovereign rollup and we want to try to like differentiate ourselves. It's literally like no, we went to the drawing board based on what our customers were asking for, and this is what they wanted. So and nothing really existed, so we built it ourselves, which is pretty crazy.
100%. And just to be clear, the Henry Ford quote, right? Like, if I had asked the customers, they would have said faster L2s or something, right? Or
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they literally did, right? But so no one said I need a sovereign rollup. Like, this is why I'm so pilled now on Celestia and so on. Like, I was following the lore, and suddenly it clicked, right? And I then realized, hey, actually, what these customers that aren't happy with Ethereum scaling technologies, what they really need is a sovereign rollup. And Celestia, by the way, kudos, Celestia invented the concept, I think. Never heard of it anywhere else. And you guys have been talking about it for 2 years or longer, right? Like, it didn't pick up. And that's because it sounds stupid, but it isn't, right? And now ABC, Abundance, Gelato will make it happen. 2025 will be the year that sovereign rollups will be massive. And we'll make sure that.
Amazing. Well, yeah, 2025 is going to be the year of abundance. We got Gigagas rollups. We got huge upgrades to the Celestia DA throughput. Hopefully, shipping a lot of the Mammoth improvements. And yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what people can build on chain now that we're slowly but surely knocking down all the barriers. Luis, thank you so much for coming on. Very stoked to follow the future progress of ABC. Keep doing all the hard work, onboarding people to modular stack. Cheers.
Sure. Sloth price, floor price, 1 million is my prediction for 2025 as well, right? So unlist your sloth, and you can never have mine.
Okay, not financial advice. The things that the guests say on this show are not.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, just kidding.
A sloth JPEG with a lunch bag for its head is obviously not financial advice.
But awesome. Well, to all the sloths out there listening, love you guys. Yeah. All right. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Luis, great to have you on. We'll see you again soon.